Veritas Oquitus by Bones Boy 15, Chapter 39, Siege the Day. Ow, ow, ow! John squinted as the damn towel pressed against the cut above his left eye. Another ruckus caused by Team Ruby had distracted John, and since they had been training for quite some time that day, his reserves were down. The natural aura shield gave out just before Pyrrha's last blow, and now he was paying for it. Sorry, Pyrrha said as she kept trying to gently clean the wound. You know, even if your semblance was fully matured, being low on aura wouldn't have prevented this. Yeah, but I figured that maybe enough training would. Ow! John pulled away and put his hands over the cut. What was that? Water? Pyrrha winced. Sorry. No, it's fine. John murmured as he pulled his hand away and closed his eyes. She's trying to help. Besides, pain lets me know I'm still alive. Norse lessons aren't exactly the best way to use as an example. And Pyrrha said with a small smile as she returned to cleaning the wound. John snorted. Yeah, but that doesn't make them any less true, he argued. Does that mean we'll start having pancakes every morning and join in on her weekend runs? The red-haired huntress asked with a wry smile on her face. God, no. John grimaced at the thought. It's one thing to have the whole school laugh at me getting my butt kicked. It's another to have them laugh when I fail to keep up with my own team. John, what? I don't have that kind of endurance, Pyrrha. John said with a resignated sigh. He crossed his arms. Pain tolerance, sure. Endurance, not so much. With that kind of attitude, it's hard to see how you'll make any progress. The light-hearted chirp made John jump in his seat. Both he and Pyrrha looked up to see Sun Wukong, the monkey fondness that they'd seen with Blake more than once, walk towards them with his hands interlaced behind his head and a grin on his face. He lifted the left one slightly in greeting. Sup, losers? Son, the speaker was surprisingly not the blue-haired boy the two often saw at his side, but the dusk-skinned teen with sage-colored hair. Sage, if John remembered the name correctly, gave his team leader an expectant look. Son's tail swished in a playful, devious manner. What's wrong, Sage? Got cold feet? Son asked. Sage grunted, and the faunus shrugged. Whatever, man. You're the one that wanted me to come with you out here. I believe your words were, we are both heading in the same direction, Sage said with a bit of a bite. Sun's grin widened. All right, that reminds me, he said, looking back at the Invincible Girl and the Ark. You guys know which plot Team Ruby is using for training? Probably not the best time to go find them, John said before Pyrrha could answer. He rubbed his finger along the cut on his forehead and pursed his lips. I will never get over the speedy Healy thing. What do you mean? Sun asked. His arms dropped to his side. Well, I never really unlocked my aura until John grunted when Pierre elbowed him sharply in the side. He sent her a small frown. What was that for? I believe, Pierre began, her jaw set and her brow furrowed in slight annoyance. That Sun is wondering why you said it was a bad time to speak with Team Ruby, not inquiring about your over aura's healing capacity. Oh, yeah, that does make more sense. John nodded and looked back at the amused Sun and the stern-faced Sage. Well, you know how Team Knox was sent back home, right? What? Why? Did someone find out about the drunken raid? Sun asked in alarm. Sage clapped his hand over his face and let out a groan. Pyrrha and John looked between the two, bewildered. No. John shook his head slowly. Sun let out a large breath and his shoulders sagged in relief. Oh, thank God. Wait, if they didn't find out about the raid, then why did they go back to Backwell? Sun asked confused. Well, if you ask Nora, they just decided to drop out because Naruto couldn't handle the fact that pancakes were better than his ramen. John rolled his eyes, which is ludicrous because pumpkin pizza mushroom cereal is the greatest thing to ever exist. Agreed, Sage nodded, earning a pair of bizarre looks from both Pyrrha and Sun. And here I always thought you were a vegetarian. Wait, is that why you always sneak off early in the morning? Sun asked, a wide grin spreading across his face. Sage's cheeks tinted just slightly, and he turned away as Sun began to laugh. Oh man, that's just so... Dude, I'm not going to judge you, but Scarlet and Neptune will, Sage muttered. Don't worry about them. They're delusional. Or misguided. Perhaps misillusional or deguided. Misillusional sounds better. Sun decided with a nod of his head. He looked back at John expectantly. Anyway, you were telling me why I shouldn't go talk to Team Ruby? Long story short, Yang's frustrated, really frustrated, like my third older sister level frustrated. John shuddered and rubbed his arm. And I think that's being a bit generous. Third oldest? Sun repeated, his eyes wide. How many sisters do you have? 7. Wow, that's just... Sun blinked several times. Sage blinked several times. Sun whistled in astonishment. Man, your dad's either really viral or your mom is like super fertile. Sun tilted his head in thought. Though, considering that makes you one of eight, I'm guessing a bit of the both. Then again, there could be twins or triplets or the rare quartet. And now I can't help but think of all the sessions it took to make that happen. That's got to be what, four tries per kid? Damn, son, Sage gaped at his team leader while John and Pyrrha flushed red enough to surpass the latter's hair color in intensity. What? It's a compliment. Sun saw the reaction he got and threw his hands up. God, see, this is why I stole away to other kingdoms. I'm surrounded by prudes. I should go back to Vacuo. That's... I... Let's go. You need to have another session on public decency with Scarlet, Sage said finally, grabbing Sun's collar and pulling him along. The monkey faunus flailed in protest, but could not escape his teammate's superior strength. John and Pyrrha remained rooted in place, both far too embarrassed to move, let alone speak, after Sun's comments. Absently, though, they wondered just what kind of place he, and by extension, their friends, came from. Where are they coming from, and why are they coming here? Haku shouted as he shot another beowulf through the head. I thought they only targeted negative emotions. Don't think about it now, just hold them off, Sasuke ordered as he cut down a creep that attempted to leap past him into what was considered Khan's territory. The two were assigned to help patrol the massive wall that was built around the established city village by the founding four, and what had been a rather easy and cushioned job had, like all missions, been turned on its head by the enormous legion of Grimm that literally came out of nowhere. There were no warning signs, no sighted Grimm that lurked about in preparation or as scouts. It was as if the Grimm horde spawned from thin air, but that couldn't have been what happened. Hold the wall! There's too many! And it's coming over, man! Game over! Echoed repeatedly in the distance as the rest of Khan's defensive forces struggled to keep the grim horde advance at bay. Sasuke let out a frustrated yell as he decapitated another beowulf and then impaled a climbing Ursum. We're sitting ducks here, Sasuke said to Haku as Venom Boy fired another round after round. Down at the climbing Grim, the last Uchiha cut down yet another Beowulf and then spun Amaterasu to unleash 3 arrows into an approaching Nevermore. I know, Haku snapped, his wrist flicking to shift Snowfall to its whip form and grabbed a leaping creep that he flung back down towards the horde at the base of the wall. Snowfall switched around once more in another flick, and the climbing Grim found themselves pelted by more dust crystals. Haku's eyes flicked up at the sound of a loud shriek, and he gave pause. Griffins, Haku muttered. He lifted his arms and unloaded hell onto the approaching flock of seven black flyers. Griffins! Shit! Haku swore, and Sasuke swore. He spun Amaterasu, slicing the hands off of Beowulf as he did, and kicking another Grim off of the wall, and shifted it to its sword form to cover the climbers while Haku focused on the higher tier aerial Grim. Sasuke cut down 2 creepers and charged his free hand with lightning. Haku, duck! Haku dropped down, and Sasuke threw his hand out. Black arcs of electrified aura shot out from his fingertips to char the lead griffin. The griffin's body was black mist before it hit the ground, as were the 3 that followed it. Damn! Sasuke scowled and let out a huff. I'd hoped to get more. Don't sell yourself short, Sasuke. Haku shot down another leaping creep that dropped into a mirror that dodged a Beowulf pounce, causing the Grim to dive back into the horde below. Haku rose back up from his mirror and pointed at the circling flocks of griffins that were strangely coordinated in their attacks on the defenders of Khan's wall. His index finger leveled specifically on the 4 that survived Sasuke's initial attack on the return. Oh look, they're circling around again. If anything, you may get your chance. Haku, keep the others off me. I'm bringing those birds down. Sasuke squared his shoulders and backslashed the Beowulf that thought it could get the drop on him before he sheathed his sword. Black arcs danced along his arms, and the sky above him began to darken. Sasuke's eyes narrowed and he held his hands up. There's a legend belonging to the Vacuo tribes of old of the being that rules the sky. Kakashi's voice echoed in a faint memory. Sasuke had just turned 14, and according to Kakashi, had only just started scratching the surface of what he could do with his semblance. He sat he sat panting from the exercises that Kakashi forced him through after each day of class. Massive craters, easily 12 feet wide, surrounded them. The mighty drones that announced its arrival, the cracks in the air that followed its path, the Sky King, the Stormbringer, the Destroyer, Kirin Ryu, the Dragon of Lightning, and now Sasuke thought as he clapped his hands together over his head and a large black bolt connected his clapped hands to the dark clouds. Bring the rain, Kirin. By God, Haku and many others stopped mid-fight while the Grim gave pause. And from the clouds descended a massive crackling, lightning variant of the creature of myth. The massive dragon was serpentine in form, its length easily surpassing the height of all four CCT towers combined. The dragon's maw opened and swallowed one of the griffins whole in one go. Before anyone could blink, the creature devoured the rest of the flocks within its sight. Its body's energy eradicated them from existence the moment they were in its jaw. When the last griffin was devoured, the dragon let out one final roar before it exploded in the sky over the horde, eradicating a good portion of the creatures that swarmed below them. Sasuke slumped to his hands and knees, heaving breaths escaping him. Damn, Sasuke! Haku blinked and shot down the Beowulfs that scaled the wall before he returned his attention to his teammate. Sasuke grinned weakly and peered down over the bottom of the wall. There's still so many, Sasuke groaned. He sat back and let his head slump against the wall. I think there's more here than there were in the breach. I hate to say it, but I think you're right. Haku sighed. He gave a bright chuckle. Still, being here isn't all bad, right? At least we're winning. My leg! Mediac! Sasuke and Haku watched a KDF soldier get carried off by one of the few Nevermore that circled around the wall and dropped into the horde below. The two teammates watched the man disappear into the void of Grim, never to be seen in one piece again. Before they exchanged a look, well, Haku, it's official, Sasuke said as he held the Matarazo up and took aim with the bow form. You're worse than Kurama. Shut up, Sasuke, Haku said before they both resumed fire on the horde. What's the damage? Kakashi said, staring out past his grand window at the many pillars of smoke that rose on the horizon. The room rumbled and shook by the distant booms that the various weapons and semblances in use caused. Sasuke's earlier demonstration had stopped a few of the flying Grim, but so many more small specks continued to circle around Kon's mighty wall. A swarm immediately brought down any airship that attempted to near the other members of the KDF. So after the fifth failed attempt, Kakashi ordered that all of the bullheads on hand would fly low, and the available fighters would climb the 10 stories that made the wall. Section Epsilon and Theta are reporting heavy casualties, Oba said as he kept one hand over the headset that covered his ears. The other furiously scrapped down information faster than what could be perceived as humanly possible. Doubly so when one took to heart that Oba was receiving / deciphering reports from all 24 sections of the wall. Section Zeta and Rho have gone dark. Best to consider those gone, sir. Then why aren't they moving in? Kakashi asked. His eyes narrowed in thought. He looked over at the heavy scarred man wearing an intimidating amount of black that just barged into the door. Ibiki, Commander, the man Ibiki said as he straightened into a formal salute. Kakashi waved him off as he relaxed. Request permission to join the defenses, sir. Go! Kakashi started to turn away, but stopped and held a hand out to catch Ibiki's arm. Wait, no, not yet. Sir, Ibiki asked in confusion. Get me online. I'm initiating Article C Kevlar 8, 6 Alphonse of Konohagakure no Sato's charter. I want everyone that's on reserve, everyone. If they started here and moved away, then come back. Takashi glared angrily into Ibiki's eyes as he pulled his hands back. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Ibiki nodded. He looked over at a pineapple-headed youth seated at a control station. Nara, don't yell. Such a pain. I'm already getting the program started. The tired young man with his head propped up on his desk stared at the screen while a shadowed hand danced across the keyboard. The young man was no older than Kakashi's students, but he wore a higher ranked vest than Oba did. In 5 minutes, we'll be in control of the information flow through the CCT and any devices connected to them. For how long, Shikamaru? Kakashi asked. Shikamaru Nara looked up and met the fifth commander's intense gaze. Without so much as a frightened blink, he cracked a small smile. As long as you want, sir, but the next great war might be declared if it lasts any longer than 2 minutes. Shikamaru shrugged. What do we care? We're the ones under siege. You think it's a siege, Shikamaru? Asuma, who was monitoring the civilian evacuation, asked from his seat. Shikamaru looked over at him. What else could it be? The young man returned. They've taken 2 sections. 4. No, wait, 5. We just lost Bravo, Oba corrected, but they're not invading. Shikamaru continued, undeterred by the interruption. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes and dropped a fresh one in his mouth, while simultaneously extinguishing the last in the half-full ashtray set beside him. Once the smoke was lit, he removed it from his mouth and crossed his arms. Something big's happening, Lord Fifth. Something new. All the more reason for me to enact the article, Kakashi hinted. He turned to look Ibiki in the eye. Why are you still here? My department also wants permission to. Granted. Now go, sir. Ibiki saluted once more before he stormed out of the room, barking at a few of the waiting members of his division before the doors closed. Lord Fifth, Shikamaru began. What? Kakashi glared at the younger man over his shoulder. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as he barely withheld a shiver from the glare. It's ready, sir. Good. Kakashi fully turned away from the windows, which tinted until they were fully dark, and 3 lights shone down to illuminate the fifth commander. A dark orb floated up from the ground. The camera on the orb gleamed a red light above the corner of the lens, and Kakashi straightened himself further. People of Remnant, human and faunus alike, I apologize for this rude and hostile takeover of the CCT. Kakashi made sure not to sound at all sorry as he continued. My name is Kakashi Hatake, and I am the fourth commander of the village of Kon. We are currently under attack by a horde of Grimm exceeding the size of that which had breached the walls of Vale no more than a few months ago. Around the world, civilians, huntsmen, and huntresses and soldiers alike were glued to whatever device broadcasted Kakashi's message. Children who were too young to understand the severity of the situation asked their teachers why the educational video stopped or why the smartboard suddenly started up, only to be shushed. At Beacon, students from Kon or the sister villages were glued to their scrolls, shushing anyone that dared speak. 5 sectors of the Grand Wall have already been lost, and though Grimm have yet to move onto the village, they will come, Kakashi said. I refuse to let them take my home without a fight. As such, I am enacting Article C Kevlar 86 Alpha of the Konagakure no Sato Charter of Vacuo and recalling every and all able-bodied graduates of Kon Academy. No, not just the licensed husband either, Kakashi added as he stared into the camera, but that broadcasted his image across the planet. I want the kids that went abroad to study. I want the doctors. I want the nurses. I want the police officers. I want the meter maids. I want the firefighters. I want the janitors. I want the goddamn lawyers. Everyone that's able-bodied and graduated from Kon's academies, come back. There will be no arguments. You will all return on your own power, or I will come find you. 60 seconds, Shikamaru said under his breath. Kakashi glanced at him briefly and then looked back into the camera. To the soldiers and huntsmen of Atlas, Vale, and Mistral, to the faunists in Menagerie, and to the honorable tribes of the Wildlands, I just have one last thing to say, he said, his eyes curled up as they closed, and he smiled. Keep yourself out of this. I don't want to deal with any more bureaucratic bullshit. Have a nice day. The camera feed cut out, and the lights came back on. The windows filled with the silhouettes and names of the councilmen from all over the Four Kingdoms. Kakashi glanced at them briefly over his shoulders. Answer them, Kakashi ordered. Shikamaru nodded and filtered the calls through. What is the meaning of this? You have no right. How dare you violate the CC? Counselors, know that I mean this know that I mean this any and all respect I can muster. Shut the fuck up, Kakashi ordered firmly. The councilman silenced immediately, their minimized screens able to see him standing in what could only be called a war room with a skeleton staff working behind him. Kakashi gestured to the few that remained dutifully at work. Counselors, what you see here are the handful of men and women that I managed to keep from charging this horde with all their fury. Hell, I've barely managed to keep myself in this room. I've lost already 500 able bodies to this horde, and I will be damned before I lose any other because of your inability to put wounded prides aside and stay out of the way. Our pride, one councilman from Mistral snapped. Commander Hatake, you overstepped your boundaries. Article 4, subsection Q, paragraph 3 and a half on the 237th page of the Vital Accords, Kakashi said, cutting the man off. Any nation that deems a threat too great to handle may request the aid of another, but none should act without proper request, lest it be seen as an act of aggression. Let me make myself perfectly clear. I am not Professor Osman, and this is not Vale. We will not be hosting the Vital Festival, nor will we allow any outside force to take command of us under the illusion of protection. Commander, a councilwoman of Atlas scowled. Kakashi arched a challenging brow. Shikamaru, I count a squad of Elysian airships already in flight from Vale, two more heading from Atlas, Shikamaru said as he stared calmly into his computer screen. He looked up and stared past his village leader at the councilors. Forgive me if I'm wrong, sir, but I believe that's a breach of the Vital Courts. For all we know, they could be heading this way to claim Khan after the Grimm are repulsed. How dare we saved Vale? Another Adlesian councilman refuted. No, you repelled Grimm with excessive force, Kakashi argued. If it weren't clear before, then I will make it clear now. If an Adlesian airship or any such like it from Vale or Mistral comes within 500 miles of Khan, counselors, then Vacuo will perceive it as an act of war. Does that confuse you in any way? Because I can say it slowly if I need to let it sink into your thick skulls. You need help, Commander. A councilman of Vale insisted. You wouldn't have recalled your people otherwise. No, Councilman, I recalled my people because I know who I want to watch my back and who I don't, Kakashi insisted. He turned and waved his hand across his throat, which prompted Shikamaru to end the call. Kakashi returned his gaze back to the now clear windows and folded his hands behind his back. Asuma, report. 15% have been successfully relocated to the shelters, sir. Asuma sat back into his chair and crossed his arms. His jaw flexed and he swiveled the cigarette in his mouth around. Sir, I need you here, Asuma. You, Guy, and Kurenai are vital to the evacuation procedure, Kakashi said. We're getting our asses handed to us, Asuma snapped as he shot up to his feet. The councilman was right. We need help, more than just the few hundred that left Khan, and we will get it, Asuma. Kakashi looked back at the man. He cracked another eye smile. Haven't you noticed that my right hand is missing? I find that highly offensive. I wasn't missing, Obito refuted as he emerged from the ground in a swirling red portal. He walked over to Shikamaru and presented a device with his false hand. Pop it in and load it up. Yes, sir, Shikamaru nodded. Once the device was connected to the computer, the windows flickered before four faces superimposed themselves over the glass. Kakashi brought his hands up and bowed his head. Fellow commanders, he said before he lifted his gaze, it's as we feared. The Grimm are being organized. End of chapter 39.